Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your Fulham podcast from down under. And I'm talking very loudly according to Sam, but we are here today to discuss a very important win, a 3-2 victory over Wolves. Possibly a slightly controversial game, but not 100% sure I agree with that. We'll obviously talk about Gary O'Neill's comments as we review the game. We'll also give a bit of an update on the Fulham women's team who had a good win on the weekend. Joining me tonight, first of all, I'll throw to Elton, and I'll call you Elton rather than Dad this time. How are we going?
Oh, I think you threw me off there. I'm very used to my title, and
Hey,
I was loving
Daddy.
the energy.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah, I was loving the energy there, Jack. Before you checked yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't check myself. Sam checked me by giving it the old head wobble.
Because you scared and startled me. You didn't have to disown your father. Jesus.
I'm very happy to be here, Jack. As always, I've got good reason to be happy to be here. There are good things happening.
And also joining us today, we have Sammy. How are we feeling, Sammy? A bit earlier for you tonight than the usual midnight kickoff?
Yeah, I actually feel really fresh, even though I was frightened like a little pigeon on a highway just then. But that's okay. That's just a technical levels thing. It's exciting. I'm ready to be here. It's all good. I'm not tired like I was last podcast. So the world is our oyster. Let's get into the thick of it. Let's go.
Well, yep, good call. Let's just smash straight into it. Well, I am feeling fractionally tired considering I was woken up by my lovely daughter at 3 a.m. for a 4 a.m. kickoff and
really cute,
didn't get back to sleep. But yeah, luckily she's very cute. But it did mean that I was able to watch the game live rather than watching it the next morning, which always just feels a little bit different. I don't know what you guys think, but when you're watching a game live compared to watching a recording of it, just the not knowing that the results are already finished, it's a frustrating feeling. So I was kind of glad that I managed to actually watch the game because it was such an exciting game. Sammy, I think before the game you were pretty down on our chances of getting a result in this one. How do you feel now that we've walked away 3-2 winners?
I'm really happy with the way in which we actually won this game as well. I mean, right off the bat, I would like to discuss just watching the game very early in the morning, discombobulated, and also again just a little. It's so difficult when you're watching that early after being woken up, but then like your inner passion kicks in. Because sometimes when I watch the replay, I feel like an analyst, and then when I'm watching early in the morning, I remember I'm a fan, and then it's like intense again, and it's difficult. And I'm usually driving to work, so it's uncomfortable. But to answer your question, I just want to go into Iwobi on the wing because I love Iwobi on the wing now. I feel that is Iwobi's position. And he looked incredible all game for me. This felt like a very intense chess match. But yeah, like it was a weird game. It was a weird game.
Are we done?
I really
I'm not
enjoy
done.
how you said. I really enjoy how you said to answer your question and then just didn't answer my question whatsoever.
Yeah. Guys,
I did pick
it's
that
about
up.
the motion. It's about keeping the motion going. You know, it's about continuing
that's
on.
cool.
You disowned your
Keeping yourself
father.
afloat.
You disowned your
Keeping
father.
yourself afloat. Dad, I'll throw to you your thoughts on the game. You obviously watched it in the morning, but you know we all were. I mean, I remember you saying that you don't know where the goals are going to come from. I mean, we'll get on to the fact that we scored a couple of penalties. We've got a couple of penalties. But yeah, I mean, that really is where the goals came from. But I mean, just in the context of how things have been going recently and our recent results, how important is this victory?
Oh, huge. So big. Every week I just look at us sinking. That's kind of what it feels like. That always felt like there was a buffer. Maybe a buffer to the bottom three, but I still was very uncomfortable about us just losing ground with the middle of the table where I just want to feel like we belong there, and I think we do. I think we do belong there, but it just hasn't happened for us. And you're funny you should say that. I'm still not 100% sure on where we get our goals next week, but if you think about it, if you just run very hard at defenders and throw yourself about a bit and actually cause a bit of chaos, hey, I'm about that as well.
Jack Grealish logic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
well,
much.
Look, I think you can say you just run hard in the box and penalties will come. All the penalties that were won for both teams, in fact, for the game, I think were due to some very good play, build-up play firstly, but also good play in the box, smart thinking, quick thinking, and getting in good positions. We'll obviously talk about them in a bit more depth because there is. I don't know if you guys have seen the comments from Gary O'Neill. He's basically come out and said that the referee told him after the game, which is such a classic manager thing to say, that Tim Ream should have been sent off, given a second yellow card when he gave away the penalty. That Fulham's first penalty shouldn't have stood. That Vinicius should have been sent off, and Fulham's second penalty shouldn't have stood. Basically, just saying we got done by VAR throughout the game, which is. Look, like I said, we'll get onto it and look at each incident in a bit more detail, but it feels like sour grapes to me and someone who's had a pretty rough evening and sort of come off second best. It's poor from a manager. We see it every week, a manager berating VAR, and unfortunately we see teams being on both sides of it, especially down this end of the table.
I don't think that's a very smart thing for a manager to do, to publicize what may well have been a legit conversation between him and the ref. He's an idiot for doing that. He's actually broken confidence there if that was really said.
Yeah.
And he, as angry as he might be, that's a really dumb thing to do.
Well, I mean, find me a referee who's going to make comments to you after the game now that you've come out and said that and just dumped him in it. Because like you said, if that was a genuine conversation, fine. But I assume that conversation is meant to be in confidence. But anyway, look, let's actually talk about the game itself. And guys, a really bright start from Fulham. We dominated possession. We're moving the ball around well. And it was a classic Fulham goal over the last couple of years, right at the very start. Willian slipping the ball through for an overlapping Robinson, who puts in a good cross and a really solid finish from Iwobi. Sammy, you were obviously happy to see Iwobi starting. Interesting to see him starting on the wing rather than centrally as he's played in the last few weeks. But great to see him get his first league goal for Fulham.
Look, for me, I haven't, unpopular opinion, I haven't been the most sold on Iwobi. I've liked him, but I've never really known where he's like properly fitted in. Because he's largely been playing in center mid, but he was a revelation tonight. Like he felt like what Silva sees in him, and if that's the future, I really, really, really like it. Like that whole right side between him and Castagna, there was a point where like they just felt like prime Barcelona, just one touch passing, just had really, really nice control, really creative. I mean, for the entire game, I thought he was electric. I just don't know why it's necessarily taken this long to actually have him in that position, because he just felt so natural there and it just seemed to work so well. I mean, it could have just been like a shot in the dark, but I don't know about you guys, but yeah, Dad, you go.
Well, I'm not sure where you've been, Sam, because I think Iwobi's efforts have been pretty similar, actually, since he came to the club.
He has, but I felt that, like, on the right wing in particular, it just felt like he had so much control, and it felt like he's always supposed to be there, you know?
Well, I think he's a very busy player, and he runs really hard. He's always offering something, and I think we've been seeing that all season. But I just spare for a moment the thought of Kenny Tete combining with Iwobi down that side. That could be an interesting little matchup.
Oh.
But interesting thing about it, though, I thought we were really moving the ball around really, really well at the beginning of the game. It was like old school championship Fulham, wasn't it? And it was really good to watch. Very confident, and but then there were moments where we felt like we sort of just drifted out of it again, and I don't know if it's a concentration thing or just I don't know. It just felt like it wasn't fully sustained even for the first 45 minutes. I don't know what you think, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about the first 10 first, because there's quite a lot to unpack in that little section. We had, in fact, in the first minute of the game, I don't know if you guys remember, the ball comes into the box from Pereira on the right. Raul Jimenez, for some reason, tries to backheel it in rather than wrapping his foot around it. Try again. I like what Jimenez does sometimes, but I just think he overplays a little bit, and this was an instance where he overplayed. He really tries something that's, it comes off every now and then, but wrap your foot around it, get the ball on target, and just make sure you make contact with it.
Well,
could have been a very good opening for us.
I'm going to be more brutal, and I thought he was pretty terrible last night. He offered really very little. It's really disappointing.
I don't want to keep bashing him. It's just it's a broken record, isn't it? It's just, what do you?
We'll get there, guys. Let's try and focus a little bit. The Iwobi goal. After
you want structure?
Minutes, obviously. I want to actually try and make my point first, if I can.
Go for it, mate.
Yeah, the Iwobi goal, obviously a great start. I've read our earliest goal in the Premier League, I think, since 2006. Which is kind of crazy to think, scoring in the 7th minute. And then a couple of minutes later, I don't know if you remember as well, Tom Kearney had an attempt on goal. I think it was from a corner. Where a really well-worked corner. Willian standing short just inside the box and slips it to Kearney, who puts a good shot on goal, but quite an easy save for Sarr in goal for Wolves. But it was a really, really strong opening 10 at least from Fulham. And then I do agree with you, Dad. We definitely had instances where it was just sloppiness. We were giving the ball away in pretty vital areas. Harrison Reed gave the ball away a couple of times, quite deep. And, we've said it again about when you play, those top sort of 8 sides in the league. They punish you when you make those mistakes. We were fortunate tonight. I think that Wolves didn't punish us on multiple occasions. They made some poor decisions a few times. They should have got a shot off and tried to put a cross in a few times. But look, eventually they did score a goal. And I have to say, it has to be put down to poor defending. The ball gets crossed in. I saw a few people saying that Robinson should have done better to potentially block the cross. I actually think the winger did very, very well and completely outsmarted Robinson. I wouldn't put any blame on Robinson there. The one big issue I found was there are 8 Fulham players in the box and 2 Wolves players at the back post completely unmarked.
That was
it's just issue. A matter of absolute ball watching and it's sloppy defending. And there were a couple of instances throughout the game of very sloppy defending. Sammy, you obviously agree with that point. Fulham definitely should have done better there, hey?
Yeah, there was a couple of points in the game as well where I saw that Harrison Reed was dropping back even further. So he essentially had quite a few points where he had 5 men back. I could see on the replay, you could see everyone was tracking back. So just to allow that level of space for them to capitalize on that really, really doesn't sit right with me. I mean, I feel that our defense at the moment is in a bit of a transitional period. I think Calvin Bassey definitely is the future. I really like Castagna, and I think Robinson is pretty stable. I mean, you guys know how much I love Tim Ream. I love Tim Ream, but at the moment, not that he's playing terribly, but I feel like there is just a big lack of balance going on there. I feel like, and it's so weird as well because we've been so used to having such a stable back line. So for it to feel a little bit out of whack is jarring. I mean, we're usually complaining about like the attacking front three, but like, tonight it felt like, yeah.
Well,
centre-back
it's
wasn't right.
not terrible. It's not terrible, but it's just not a slick machine, is it? Because
Exactly. Yeah.
the sum of the parts isn't amazing. Even though I really like Calvin Bassey. I think we all do, but he's got some attention deficit. Just occasionally, he just momentarily comes up with something that he thinks is a great idea, and it isn't. It's high
Can I-
risk.
Yeah,
Hang
can
on,
I
hang
pose a
on.
question? Yeah, no, you do your bit. You do your bit. You do your bit. You do. Yeah,
Yeah.
you keep going.
I prefer Tide, Sam.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tide Sam's good.
Nice.
He's got too much energy. I've lost now. Oh, he'll just sort of suddenly think this is a great idea and do a very, very long. He'll try and pick a guy out in midfield, which is just too high risk, and it doesn't come off from time to time. And maybe if he was playing on his left side, he might be less inclined to do that sort of thing. But I have to say, I have seen it on his left side as well. I think it's just in him.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably fair. But with that being said, I don't reckon we'll probably see it come to
No, I love him
fruition.
though. I love him.
Oh, I adore the man. But like, I don't think it'll come to like fruition in a Premier League game. But I think they'll get an opportunity in maybe like an FA Cup run. How far off do you reckon we are from maybe a Tosin and Bassey starting situation?
I think it should be next week. We're playing
Really?
against Liverpool. We're playing against a very good Liverpool side who score goals, are very dangerous going forward. Tim Ream, and again, we love Tim Ream on this podcast. But the last few weeks, it's just starting to become obvious that he's just fractionally behind the pace.
Oh, this
And
is bold of you,
yes,
Jack.
your smarts can take you a long way, but I just feel like the penalty that he gave away, he's just half a step behind. And the Tim Ream from a couple of years ago is there and cleaning that up, and even the Tim Ream of last season, I don't think gives away that penalty.
Absolutely not.
He played a couple of poor passes. I don't think his passing was terrible, but he just is looking fractionally off the pace at the moment. And the fact that Bassey is playing out of position and looking better than his defensive partner is a bit of a red flag for me. I think Tosin came on.
I think that's fair. I think it's fair.
Tosin came on right at the end, and I think actually impressed, even though he was only on for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
He looked very dominant in the air. We know that he's good with the ball at his feet as well. He's a good passer of the ball. He's obviously a little bit quicker than Tim Ream as well. I just feel like with Diop still unavailable, Tosin and Bassey have to be the way forward. At that point, you can play Tosin on the right, Bassey on the left in his more comfortable position. You can bring Kenny Tete back, who's obviously played with Tosin a lot over the last few years. So will comfortably slot into that position. You've got good backup in Castagna. You've got Tim Ream coming off the bench as a backup. It just seems a little bit more stable. I just feel like we're reaching that point, and we'll talk about Tom Kearney again. And these guys are older players who've been at the club a long time, but at some point you have to. I don't know. You have to let
Take
go
them
of
out
the
to the back.
Well, in a way, I guess not quite that brutal, but you don't want to let go of your, these guys who are Fulham heroes and Fulham legends and captain the team to promotions and captain the team in the Premier League, and there's so many good memories attributed to Tim Ream, but eventually you have to do what's best for the team. And I think Tim Ream, having listened to a few episodes of his podcast, would probably agree in a way that it's team first at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
But
if go on.
Oh no, I was just saying you almost shouldn't be putting your manager in that position, because the very best of them bow out before they go into decline. Go out at the top.
He can I agree with that,
That's
but
true.
he can still do it. It's just that he's
No,
he's in that little
it's
transition period at the moment where he can still do it, but
mm,
not consistently enough, and it's actually the
well,
consistency that's the issue.
but that's not being able to do it. You can if you can do it in moments. It's a bit like a young kid who's technically good but can't actually do it every week, and it depends on
Okay,
the
but it's not
opposition.
moments when you're a player like Tim Ream. It's 95% of the game. But the problem is, as a defender, that 5% can be so key and vital for getting a result.
Yeah,
If you make a mistake in that 5% of the game and you give away a goal, it's curtains. It's different as a striker, as someone like a Ronaldo. You have an off day, you don't score. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
he didn't have a very good game, but if you're in a position like a keeper or a defender, I mean, I don't know if you guys were following what's been happening at Wrexham with Mark Foster, who was the keeper
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah,
Ben
yeah.
Foster,
Ben
not
Foster.
Mark
Yeah.
Foster. And he came back and played in the National League and was doing well. Started in League Two, and made a couple of really key errors, like stuff that you just wouldn't expect a class keeper to do. And he basically retired after about 5 or 6 games this season because he just went, I'm not at that level at the moment, and I can't do it. And the problem is, as a goalkeeper, if you make a mistake, it's a goal.
I listened to, and again, you guys are gonna love it. I listened to a really good TIFO podcast about this the other day, but it was basically talking about how all players essentially have a bit of an expectancy point, and they essentially have a certain amount of miles. So then you see these attacking players who are just running crazy. They usually peter out at around about like 28, 27, but yet defenders and goalkeepers can go for a substantially longer amount of time because they're not necessarily moving around as much as them, or their decisions are based on being more calculated and reading play. And I think Tim has finally probably got to that point where
but that's counter to what Jack's saying. I think because Jack's
I
saying
didn't
that.
agree with what Jack said, though. I'm just saying my point.
Well, I think the point is that fine margins and all that. If your mistake or your 95% effort and a 5% problem in your game causes a goal, that's very serious. Whereas
Yeah.
if it's just, if you're normally good for 2 goals a game as a genius striker, but you only get 1, somehow it doesn't have the same effect. I back to the point I was trying to make before about retiring when you're at the top of your game. Someone on the live stream, I think it was Steve Reynolds, commented that, if we can see some of these weaknesses, how come Silva can't? Well, maybe part of the problem is that all of those soft things around Tim Ream, he's obviously a giant in the dressing room around the players group. He's a hero of the club. He's a good man to have in your side. And even if his form is not that great, you're always going to be tempted to pick him as a manager. And I think you're almost putting a manager in a difficult position. If you're not at the top of your game, you're in decline, but you're still hanging about. And maybe that sounds a little bit harsh for Tim Ream because he had an incredible season last season, and suddenly we're talking about the fact that he shouldn't be there anymore. But it is difficult for a manager to look past that because if you're comparing 2 players for a position and you're really scrutinizing it, 2 or 3 guys around a table, those issues actually come into it in terms of, Tim Ream getting the nod.
Well, Tim's
100%.
interesting. Yeah, Tim's an interesting one, though, because I feel that maybe in like the past 3 years, he's probably played more for Fulham than he has in his entire time because he's been with the club now, what, like 7 years? Jack, can you correct me on that? 7 or 8 years?
8.5.
Yeah, and for like the past 5 years, he hasn't featured anywhere near as much as he's featured in the past 3. Is that fair?
Maybe
I mean,
he should have left us
the
wanting
problem
more.
was when we played in the Premier League, he got dropped by Jukanovic and dropped by Parker as well. Every time we've been in the Championship, he's he's played, and then he played his first full Premier League season last year. So he's played a lot. I mean, in his first few seasons at the club, he basically didn't miss a game for his first 5 years. This is actually his 9th season at Fulham. And look, I think I agree with you, Dad. I look, saying that Silva must be able to see the problem. I don't think it's officially a problem at this stage. I just think he's got to start having a bit of a transition plan in place. And I guarantee Silva will be seeing it. It's not like we're the only ones who can see it. All the fans are seeing the same thing, and this manager who is paid a lot of money and has a lot of experience isn't picking up on the fact that Tim Ream is looking a little bit slow out there. It's obvious.
Well, he also as well, I think we got to give Silva a little bit of credit here because he did inherit a lot of this squad and he's been slowly reshaping it. I mean, he never signed Kearney. He never signed Tim Ream. He's been utilizing them, I think, to their utmost ability. And I think he is trying to look towards the future. But at the moment, he just doesn't necessarily have anybody better than Tim Ream. But I feel like we're just kind of approaching that tipping point where we potentially have better options, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we've been in a holding pattern because of injuries, but I wouldn't be overly surprised to see a few changes going into the Liverpool game. So look, we went in at halftime, 1-1. It was a good half. It was well contested. I think Fulham definitely had the better of the first 20 minutes, and I'd say Wolves came right back into the game towards halftime. They had a couple of chances. Hwang Hee-chan, I think, hit the crossbar.
Yeah, that's right.
And Fulham had a handful of chances. Nothing significant, I don't think. Neither keeper was forced to make any impressive saves. And then second half, everything kicked off. Let's talk about the first penalty. This is Nelson Semedo taking down Tom Kearney in the box. The referee gives a penalty almost immediately. Dad and Sam, on your first viewing of this in real time, did it look like a penalty?
Dad,
Yeah.
I'll let you go. I don't really have too much discourse about it. He steps on his foot. What else can you say?
Well,
the contentious
there's
thing
a
is
very
that
obvious
he
angle where
touches the
he
ball
gets the
first.
ball, all of the ball.
But I don't know why that should matter. So what, you got the ball, but you also got the player.
Well, you can't say so what, you got the ball. The whole point in a fair tackle is that you get the ball.
It wasn't a tackle. He actually got his foot to the ball.
He got the ball.
But then tripped the player,
which is kind of fine, because if you think about the Tom Kearney tackle in the lead up to the penalty, Tom Kearney tackles Lamina, and it was a superb tackle. Tom Kearney trips the player, but also gets the ball. So, going by your logic there, that would also be a foul.
Yeah, and if it was in the box, that's definitely a penalty. So
no, Kearney's tackle on Lamina would never be a penalty. It's a very good tackle. What I'm saying is, and actually the weird thing about this one is, there's only one angle where you can see Semedo get the ball. Every other angle you see Semedo make contact with Kearney's foot, and it kind of looks like Kearney shifts the ball away from Semedo from his left foot to his right foot, and Semedo catches his foot. And let's be fair and honest here, Semedo steps on the end of his big toe when Kearney goes down, and you could see Kearney's reaction post game. I don't know if you guys watched the interview with Kearney post game. He said, "Oh yeah, I mean, at that speed, you go down." He was pretty coy looking at the replay. I'd say it's a bit of a soft penalty, but he does definitely make contact with Kearney's foot, and it should be given. And I think the biggest thing here, VAR can't see a clear error because there is contact. So penalty given. And Sam, I'll throw to you first. How nervous, knowing our record with penalties, how nervous were you seeing Willian step up?
Do you know what? I actually wasn't that nervous because I only get nervous when Mitrovic does it. Willian, I trust. Pereira, I trust. What? Like the last time we went into like penalties against Tottenham, we got 5 in a row. Like I Okay, one thing I will say though, is Willian is really, really good at penalties. He smashes it. And just total precision. I didn't fret too much. I mean, obviously, like, it was like anxiety inducing, but like I had trust in him, and I really
Well,
liked
and
that feeling.
an interesting point on his penalties.
It's
He's
100%, isn't
there
it?
are only 3 players with a better penalty record than Willian in the Premier League at the moment. He scored all 7 of his Premier League penalties that he's taken, and he scored 9 out of 10 across his whole career. The only
That just
people
makes me
ahead of him,
angry.
Yaya Toure, Dimitar Berbatov, and Ruben Neves, who all have 100% records as well, but have 11, 10, and 9 penalties to their names. So, I mean, it's baffling that he didn't score an extra 7 goals last year when Mitro missed all of those penalties.
I don't even want to discuss it. I don't even
but
want
that's
that fuels
just
my
the
blood.
massive ego problem that a striker always feels compelled, even if he's not confident. Is they'll just never hand the job over because they would just feel like such a lesser being to be a striker and a big, alpha male.
Get a comfort blanket. Deal with it. You're not as good.
But interestingly, I don't think Willian was our second choice penalty taker last year.
I think it was
I'm pretty
Pereira.
sure Pereira
Pereira
was our second choice.
Yeah,
Which
definitely.
is even more baffling for me. The fact that Willian was so far down the list, but has this amazing record and took 2 very calm and well taken penalties.
So well taken.
But it seems that is the way that you increase your probability, really, is to be able to run in, stop, wait for the keeper to commit, and then, knock it the other way. Which,
Yeah, it's all mind games.
It's all
yeah,
mind
sure.
games. Like at that,
but you can still think you've got the mind. You've got to be able to execute whilst actually playing that game with a keeper.
Well, this is what I love about Willian.
He's cool.
He's so cool. He's just chill, man. He's just chill. He's like, yeah, I did this on the rig. What up?
Still look very tired though, as he always does.
He always does that.
No, he always looks incredibly disappointed in his teammates.
Yeah,
he's like,
but he also looks like he's about to
sweaty.
vomit through pure fatigue.
The commentator used the very appropriate description for him. He said he looks disconsolate.
Disconsolate. That's amazing.
That's the
so
right
good.
expression for that look of his face, with his shoulders drooping down and looking like he's run 25K with a backpack.
I love that he's basically just got to the point where he's like, all right, boys, I'm sick of this shit now. I take the penalties. Watch daddy do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there was a little bit of chat beforehand. I saw Kearney stepping up, and I think Kearney's a pretty good penalty taker as well.
Yeah, I think he is.
Pereira was in around the conversation. I did see Harrison Reed getting a bit too close to the ball, which made me very nervous. But fortunately, Willian put away a good penalty. And then, look, how many minutes later was it? It was about 12, 13 minutes later, another penalty given away, this time against Fulham. Dad and Sam, for me, again, we sort of talked about it when we were talking about Tim Ream before, but was there any controversy in this penalty? Do you think it was a fair penalty or maybe a bit soft?
Oh no, I think it's a pen. I mean, I'd be pretty annoyed if a defender did that to one of our guys going into the box, and it wasn't, and it was not given.
Yeah, look.
Initially, I thought it may have been outside of the area, but it clearly was nowhere. It was completely inside the area.
Mm. Yeah.
Look, I think it's a fair pen. I think.
I agree. Well played. That's my daddy. That's my daddy. Yeah. Dickhead. Yeah, no, look, in the exact same way that I was extremely definitive about the penalty that we created. I mean, it's Tim's just being real sloppy there, and yeah, it's 100% a penalty for me. Like there's no argument.
I don't think it was that sloppy. I just think it's when you're a quarter of a yard slow and you're a bit desperate and you know it's your man, you just overreach, and you're going to cause. I don't think it's sloppy. I think he was actually trying to play catch up there.
Well, it's quite interesting. The ball comes over the top and it's headed on by, I think it might be Mateus Cunha heads the ball on. But if you look at the replay and watch what happens, Tim Ream, as soon as he sees that it's going in that general direction, Tim Ream actually backs off even further, I guess knowing that he needs that extra yard to try and catch up to Huang if it goes in that direction. And it's just, really he should probably be marking, if he was a little bit quicker, he should be marking Huang quite closely, and Huang doesn't get a run at that ball, which is what causes the penalty, because he gets that space, gets his body across Tim Ream, and Tim Ream makes contact with him. I think a better defender then, it would have been Bassi, who we know is quite physical, probably just muscles Huang out of that in the first place, and it deals with it quite comfortably. The problem is, I think Tim Ream is just trying to keep up with the game in some circumstances, and it causes errors like this. Steve makes a mention on our live stream, and a few people mentioned it on Twitter post game as well. And your thoughts? Tim Ream had already been carded during the game. Should Tim Ream have been shown a second yellow card there?
I think it wouldn't have been. I would have been annoyed. I would have been really anxious at that point.
I mean, he got shown one in the Brentford game earlier in the season for similarly a very soft foul, but gave away a penalty and got an instant yellow card for it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very, very difficult to argue against that yellow card if it came. Really.
Yeah, the only argument that I could possibly give, as it's more reckless than dangerous. Like it's just a ill footing and just a bad mistake.
I think reckless is the wrong word. You mean clumsy, I think.
Yeah, clumsy. No, yeah, fair enough. Synonyms, but whatever. Yeah, no, it doesn't feel malicious. It doesn't feel like he's actively trying to like take out the player. If it felt like that, then absolutely, yeah, 100% yellow card and then a red. But I feel like objectively, it does just feel like a mistake more so than anything. So I feel that you definitely could have given him a yellow, but it would have been.
But the point is, so Sam, if he'd given him a second yellow, would you have been wild about it?
Probably. I would have been like, it's definitely unfair. But I mean, 2 yellows. What do you do? You know, would have been a dick move.
No, I think it would have been incredibly fair to give him a yellow card. I wouldn't have been pissed off about it coming into this podcast. I would have been going, he gave away a penalty for a sloppy foul in the box. 100%, I don't see why the referee wouldn't give a yellow card there. The one thing that I know is that referees have been told that you don't have to give a yellow card just because someone gave away a penalty. Like you said, Sam, it's not like there's any malicious intent there. He's not like he's trying to stop a goal scoring opportunity. It's an accidental clash of bodies, which is what takes him down. And so I think I understand why he didn't give a yellow card.
I mean, it absolutely shouldn't be a yellow card without question.
He's not pulled him back. They've just
purely a foul. It's just a foul that happens to happen in the area, happens to occur in the area, and therefore a penalty. But it's not a yellow card level incident.
It wouldn't be a yellow anywhere else on the pitch. So so look, a good penalty from Huang Hee-chan. It's well put away. And for me, at least, it felt like this game was going to be one of those missed opportunities. We subbed off Jimenez, who I thought had a pretty poor game, brought Vinny on, subbed off Pereira as well and brought Harry Wilson on. A couple of little half chances. Tom Cairney had an attempt on goal. Iwobi had a shot that was saved, but it was a pretty comfortable shot. Coming into the last minute of the game, kind of looks like the game's all gone. And all of a sudden we see Harry Wilson, just pure smarts in the box, nipping in, getting in front of the defender. It's João Gomez who gives away the penalty. And it's just, the ball's landed in front of Gomez. He's gone to poke it away. And Wilson's just coming from the side, completely unsighted. And he's made contact.
Yeah.
At first, guys, the penalty didn't get given. Dad, I'll throw to you first. On first viewing, did you think it was a penalty?
I did, only because I have incredible intuition. No, only kidding. No, I actually felt
I'm
quite
incredibly one-eyed.
I actually felt quite sorry for. Is it? Who was the defender? Gomez?
João Gomez gives it away.
Yeah, I felt a bit sorry for him because, like you say, Wilson came, in a very balletic kind of a Wilson move. He sort of threw his arms and body across and just arrived. And the guy was genuinely actually trying to play the ball. I thought he was trying to play the ball.
Yeah,
and he was pretty unlucky. And I don't blame him for kind of putting his hands up and going, "What just happened there? Why?" But did he take Wilson out? He kind of did, and so technically, it's happened in the box, so it's a penalty. And I think, would that have been given as a foul in the middle of the pitch? I think it would have. If Wilson goes down,
I agree.
Yeah.
It would be a foul. It wasn't intentional. It was very unlucky.
No, it happens all the time in the middle of the pitch where a player nicks the ball away from another one and they get taken out. It's not it's not malicious. It's just a player being quicker than another player and they're making contact. It's happened in the box. It took a long time for VAR to make the decision, but they came to the right one for me in the end.
As a Fulham supporter,
as a very one-eyed Fulham supporter,
yeah.
But look, there was contact. This was probably the clearest of all the penalties. I'd say it's very clear that there was contact made in the box. The fact is, VAR overruled this call and said you've made an error. We played on for it was actually 2 minutes worth of play on after the foul in the box, or at least it felt like 2 minutes worth until Kenny was fouled in the middle, and then they finally stopped play to go and check the penalty. And as soon as you know that the referee gets called over to have a look at the screen, VAR are saying, "I'm pretty sure this is a penalty. You need to come and look at this." And look, again, I think this was the correct decision as a one-eyed Fulham fan. But there's contact. Wilson goes down. Yes, he, like you say, he goes down like a sack of potatoes. But I mean, that's kind of what you have to do in instances like this. And Fulham win the penalty. And Willian, again, this was one instance where I almost closed my eyes and looked away from the screen because I wanted that to go in so badly. At one point, I genuinely put my hands in front of my eyes and thought, actually, no, I have to watch this. I can't not watch this. But yeah, puts away a very good penalty. Goes the other way. The keeper goes the right way, but it's side netting. It's a really well taken penalty from Willian.
So good. Quite
tough to step up and take a second penalty in a game. And the commentators were saying at the time as well, basically saying you just you almost pick another penalty taker because there's too many mind games going on. Are you going the same way? Are you going a different way? What do you do? And well done for Willian, looking cooler than anyone in the rest of the stadium, stepping up and taking that penalty and putting it away.
This is what I love about this man, though. He has nothing to prove in the Premier League anymore, aside from the fact that he can still do it. He's won everything. Cool as a cucumber. Just, it's such a shame that we're probably only realistically going to get like a year left of this guy performing probably at like this level. But he is just to pick his brain about football. I mean, if I was any player in that squad at the moment, I would just be taking notes off of him constantly because he's consistently brilliant and he's just got such a brilliant football brain. That
interesting, Jack. You said, and I did hear the commentators say that this is the moment where maybe you give it to someone else to relieve the pressure. I think at that moment in the game, what was it, the 94th?
It was the 94th minute when he actually took the penalty.
I think it doesn't matter who steps up, whether it was the guy who scored in the 59th minute or a new guy, that's an enormous amount of pressure. It means so
Yeah, of
much.
course.
It's to win the game, and B, to get 3 points for a side who can't score goals. It's huge amounts of pressure. And, thank God that, like you say, Sam, he didn't feel the need to prove anything. I want
Yeah.
to say about Willian, and I always think this when I watch the guy. It's very impressive to watch a team knock the ball around really quickly. But what I love about Willian is his ability, and this is where he's just super class. He, in really, really tight spaces, when they're knocking it around in little triangles, he's thinking of the next move. When it starts getting tight, the ball comes to him. He always, or not always, but very frequently, is already thinking about a player outside of the triangle, and he picks someone, 20 meters out and knocks the ball clear and immediately relieves pressure. And if he's aging, I want a bit of that, because he he he's even if his legs can't do it, his brain can still do it, and his feet and body can still do it.
I love what yeah. I
Go on.
love how he kind of reminds me like Messi, in the sense like older Messi playing. Messi does this thing where he just slows down and he kind of walks a bit, but he just looks around and is in total control of everything that he's doing. And yeah, he's totally making that face the whole time of just being like, "Come on, guys," because he's just constantly annoyed and frustrated because he knows exactly how it should be sometimes. And then we kind of don't necessarily facilitate for him a lot, which is
It almost feels like
frustrating.
if you had 3 highly skilled Brazilian forwards or Latin American forwards in this side, I reckon Willian's game would rise again, because I think
Oh,
he's just so good at that kind of stuff. If he was thrown into the mix with a few of those players in our squad, I think we'd get something even more out of him.
well, Iwobi for me felt like that. He felt like he could be that extra piece. Now we just
Oh,
need somebody up front.
I mean, he scored. It was a really good finish, but he's great at creating, but his final ball is often pretty average still.
No, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Look, I love Willian. I think you guys are maybe being pretty kind about his season so far. He's not had a very good season so far. Let's be honest. His performance
Better than Jimenez.
Sure, but everyone's better than Jimenez. But his performances have been pretty bleak so far this season. He had a good game against Sheffield United where he got a goal and an assist. Got an assist in the League Cup against Norwich. Apart from that, and the game against Wolves, he's been almost unsighted this season. And I think, we've talked about players slowing down, and he's definitely starting to slow down. And we're seeing, some of those times last year where he would be standing up a player and then just cut to the right and all of a sudden find himself in a couple of yards of space and able to do something. I'm noticing this season he cuts to the right and he doesn't have that extra space that he was having last year. And it just feels like he's lost, again, half a yard of pace. And so I think you can still get a lot out of a player like that, but it definitely feels like I can't imagine he's going to go around again next season. I think he's got another year on his contract, but I don't imagine he's going to be our starter next season on the wing.
I'm backing myself here. I still think it's a form thing with him. I agree with you. He hasn't had compared to last season. He has not had a great season, Jack, 100%. But there is still, maybe that's what you're saying anyway. There are still moments, and maybe a half a dozen moments in a game, which are match-winning moments for a mid-table kind of team. And
for sure.
I'd still pick him because he's still utter class, and he can do things and create stuff that many would probably not even dream about half the things that he can do.
I mean, there's just not much better that a team like Fulham can do. You try and unearth hidden gems and pick up 22-year-olds from the depths of the European leagues and find an unpolished diamond, but someone like Willian he's got the experience. It's similar reasons why it's good having someone like Tim Ream in the team. They're an old head. They understand it. They can lead from the front. he's the man who steps up and takes the penalties. But I just feel like I can see that he's starting to slow down, and I'm sure Silva's got a bit of a plan. If you look at players like Bassi, who he's bringing in, trying to bring some younger players in, and I hope we also see like a contract extension for Tosin, because Tosin, Bassi, Diop as a back three for the next 5 or 6 years is, and Defugeros as well on top of that, is
It's all right.
exciting. I think we need to see that on the wings as well. I think Harry Wilson is a good option, but he's starting to get on a little bit. I don't know exactly how old he is. I think he's 28 or so. But we're going to have to find some younger players to take those positions in the next few years. Couple more talking points before we close out the game. In the 88th minute, I think it was, or 87th minute, 88th it was, Carlos Vinicius has shown a yellow card. I don't know what to do with Vinny. I love him, but at the same time, I pull my hair out when I see shit like that. He gets taken to the ground by Kilman, wins a free kick, does really well. He's holding up play effectively and holding up the ball close to the touchline. Gets pushed in the back by Max Kilman. Kilman shouts, "Get up," to him, which Vinny does, but in doing so, does a weird snake-like motion up towards Kilman and then effectively headbutts him in the face.
No, he sort of nose butts him. He kind of rubs his nose into his face.
He's sort of, it was weird though, as you see him come up, he's sort of doing a little snake action and then gets up, and he doesn't actually, I'd say it's in the process of getting up, he just doesn't move his head out the way of Kilman's head, if you want to be technical about it. And I don't know if you guys watched the footage after the game.
I did, yeah.
I can't remember who the referee was who they talked to about it, and he basically says because the contact is negligible and effectively he's not making forceful contact with the head, that's why the referee only gave it as a yellow card. For me, that's a red card, and it should be. I think, Vinny's third red card of the season for striking, considering he smacked Thiago Silva in the back of the head as well, with a forearm, and he did it the week before too. He's got an anger issue, and as much as I,
it's really insecure. He's a striker. He's frustrated because I'm telling you, if he scored 25 goals and was screaming with great form, he wouldn't be doing this shit.
I disagree. I think he would. We've seen it so far that even when he's scoring goals, he's still lashing out at people. He's got an anger issue, and as much as I love him and actually want him to start over Jimenez, if he is a worry about potentially getting a red card in a game, and then you play with 10 men and no striker, I can understand why Silva is maybe picking Jimenez at the moment.
Look, I mean, he was brought in for a substitute for Mitrovic, so he had to have poor emotional regulation. That had to be a prerequisite. But that aside, look, he's got cult status for life because of the goal against Chelsea, and I'll always kind of love him for that. But let's face it, he's just an idiot. He's always kind of been an idiot. I love him in the way that you love your problematic drunk uncle who is really, really fun. But, I mean, long-term, kind of thanks for the memories, but he's not a viable solution. I like Muniz. I want to see Muniz get more time, and I think Silva also wants to see Muniz get more time. Oh, man, our striker situation again. I just can't be asked talking about it. Do you know what I feel like? I feel like somebody who's like just constantly banging on about their ex-girlfriend, and it's just shut up. We've heard it a million times before. We need to move on. She's gone. Mitrovic is gone. We just got to ride it out. Just ride it out till January. Hopefully, ride it out till January.
I genuinely reckon that at the end of this season, we will probably shift all three of them on.
I reckon.
I think there's a lot of interest in Muniz at the moment from Brazil. I think Vinny is proving that he is a little too volatile to be trusted, and Jimenez just isn't the Jimenez I think Silva was hoping for. If we sign any of the strikers that we've been linked with in January and then bring another one in the summer, I can't see a place for any of these guys, especially when you got people like Stansfield and Goddo sitting in the sidelines waiting to be your sort of third choice striker. I think I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if we saw all three leave in the summer.
Yeah,
especially with Jimenez on 100K
I think you're right.
a week.
If you're Silva and really want to be serious as a Premier League manager, you just got to be cutthroat. You got to go, it's nothing personal, but this is just not working out. And as you said before, Jack,
it's not about being cutthroat though. It's about the fact that this is what he's got. He wasn't backed to spend money on other strikers, so he just had to suck it up and deal with it. But I'm assuming that the reason for him signing a new contract with us was that the Khan said you will be given money for a striker, and so that's the reason he actually hung around, because I can't imagine he would if they said, yeah, you got to put up with Vinny and Jimenez and Muniz as your... Muniz is looking like our best striker at the moment. He couldn't get a game for Middlesbrough last year.
Yeah. I like Muniz. Muniz is probably the only one I'd actually be kind of sad to leave.
He doesn't have the skill level required.
No, Muniz is young. I think he's only
21.
23.
Yeah, 22, 23, yeah.
22, yeah. So
I don't really see that as a factor. I think
I do. I think you send him out on loan for a couple of years, and you could potentially get something out of him. I think it would be unwise to completely give up on him too early, but I just feel like it could be time for a bit of a fresh start, and cleaning out all three sort of makes the most sense at this stage. The only problem is it breaks up our Samba Whites, because that's selling 2 Brazilian players, which would just be devastating for the rest of the Brazilian crew in the club.
I mean, we just get more Brazilians. There's plenty of them. Like Rio de Janeiro is packed.
Andre coming and Pedro as well as another rumor at the moment. So we'll be replacing some Brazilians with some more Brazilians.
Yeah.
One other comment as well to make, I guess, for me, player of the match, Tom Cairney. And it's someone who we've talked about a little bit as someone who we'd like to see in the starting lineup occasionally. I don't think we were
calling for it. We called for it.
He doesn't always get put in our starting lineups though, because he's a particular type of player. But geez, he had such a good game last night. He was in control of the whole game. He pulled the strings for Fulham all night long. Everything came through Tom Cairney. He was just calm and centered, and it's the Tom Cairney of old, it almost felt like. I know he doesn't have the pace that he used to, but his footwork was superb. His decision-making was superb. I think he had a brilliant game, and I looked at the Premier League's man of the match voting, and he took out 1% of the vote, which to me was just ridiculous. Your thoughts on Cairney, Dad? I'll throw you first.
As I said, we discussed this before the game, and in the absence of Polina being, a given if he's available and fit, the question is always, who do we pair him up with? Is it Lukic or is it Reed? And and Tom Cairney is never really considered in the last 12 months as being a viable starter. And so, we definitely discussed this, and I love the fact that he grabbed his chance and proved that he is a viable starter. I think everyone thought he couldn't do 90 minutes, and he certainly did. So yeah, I loved it. I kind of miss him actually, and when things haven't been working, why wouldn't you throw to a more creative player to try and make something happen? And I thought it was great. I mean, much happier with him on the field than Lukic in this particular situation. Definitely. Don't mind Lukic when he's paired up with Polina, but I don't know. I preferred Tom Cairney last night. Definitely.
Sammy?
I think we've touched on it before. I think you guys are right. He did play. He played great. I think he always benefits though by playing teams that do have a lesser quality midfield. I mean, I know Lamina is really, really strong. And to be honest, I can't even remember like half the Wolves players anyway, so I'm not even going to pretend like I do. But I do feel that like we had a lot of time to create in midfield. I don't really think like we were particularly challenged. I don't think Kenny was challenged, but I also don't think Harrison Reed was challenged either. And I think in those moments, Kenny always shines. I mean, going into a game against like Liverpool and how strong that midfield is in particular, I'm not necessarily sure if we'd see the exact same version of him. I could be completely wrong, but I just don't necessarily see it. I think he shines when he's playing players that are of his quality or slightly below. But then when he's kind of matched with some higher quality, I think he does kind of struggle, but he will always benefit by coming on in that 60, 70-minute mark. But that's just my perspective on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing, actually, which I think is a major bogey or milestone that we've sort of brushed aside? Is this the first game in many that we actually won without Polina?
It is.
I think
So
yeah.
I believe we'd lost all 5 or 6 of the games we've played without Polina in the side, excluding cup games where he obviously gets rested. But in league games where he was suspended or out injured last year, this is the first time that we've managed to win. It's also, I think, the first time or maybe just the second time in the last like 12 years we've won against Wolves. And the first time in a very long time since we won on a Monday night. So breaking a couple of bogeys last night, which was it's important. These are things that are bugbears for players, and you know these guys are superstitious and they do pay attention to these kinds of things. And you know, because it's in the media all the time. Fulham never win without Polina in the side. So to actually prove everyone wrong against the side higher than us in the table is an important little moment for us.
I do think though, we won the game from the wings. I know that seems like an obvious statement, but I don't think we won the game from like the midfield.
But if we're saying Tom Cairney, and we could split hairs on this, but if he wasn't best on ground, he was damn near close to it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And how is he not having a massive impact on the game, regardless of whether you think we won the game because we created from the wings?
Oh no, I'm not disputing that at all. I'm just saying I feel like that is worth mentioning. So I feel that like even though Polina was out of the mix, I feel that he didn't necessarily need to be in the mix for us to win this game. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't agree.
I don't agree with it.
That's okay. That's okay. Podcasts are about discourse.
Oh dear. Let's have a quick look at the stats from the game. Fulham had 60% possession for the game, to Wolves 40. Fulham 12 shots with 6 on target. Wolves 10 shots with 6 on target. Fulham obviously with the possession outpassed 639 to 432. 6 Fulham corners to Wolves 2 and 13 fouls apiece. Let's take a quick look at the table itself. We now see Fulham opening up a little bit of a gap over Sheffield United, who are sitting in 18th place. We now have a 10-point gap and a very healthy, not healthy yet, but a decent little buffer in terms of goal difference, thanks to a couple of good results recently. Luton obviously got a good result on the weekend, got a win. It's their second win of the season. They moved to 9 points. We still have a 6-point buffer on them. So I expect Everton to climb out of the bottom 3. If they hadn't had their 10-point deduction, they'd be sitting a place behind us at the moment, and we'd be 6 points clear of relegation, and a few places clear. But I think the other way to look at it is if you look up the table, we're actually 1 point away from 10th. So it's not like we're the only club in the same situation. If you're saying that Fulham are getting dragged into a relegation fight, you have to say Palace, Wolves and Brentford are also getting dragged into that relegation fight, because we're all sitting in a very similar position at the moment. And look, it's a congested little period coming up. We'll hopefully podcast later this week and talk about that. fact of the matter is we've got 7 games in the next 33 days between now and New Year's Eve. It's a game roughly every 4.7 days. It's a game exactly every 4.7 days. So it's a period where you're going to have to rest players like Willian and Tim Ream. You're going to have to rotate players in and out. When you look at some of the defenders, guys like Robinson, who's played every game, maybe we'll see him miss a few, especially as he was playing international duty during that time as well. Maybe we'll see some youth come into the side. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of Tom Cairney because, we can have a few more combinations of players in our midfield and combinations of wingers as well. We will talk about the upcoming game against Liverpool later in the week, but it's a tough game in a tough little period for us, and one where, look, we're probably not expecting to get anything out of this game. And Liverpool have been in pretty good form this season as well. They're currently sitting 3rd in the league, just 2 points, 2 points off top spot. They'll be looking to obviously win this game to lift them, hopefully to the top of the Premier League. They've had good results against Man City recently. They're being quite clinical at the moment, so it's going to be a tough game for us. But look, you just never know with games like this. We've actually managed to get some pretty good results against Liverpool in the past. So fingers are firmly crossed for that game at Anfield next Sunday. It's a 2 p.m. kickoff. But like I said, later in the week, when we get together to preview this game, we'll discuss it in a little bit more detail. Let's move on, and we'll have a quick chat about the Fulham women's team, who had another good victory on the weekend, obviously coming off the back of that huge game at Craven Cottage. Back into league action now, playing Crawley AFC. Crawley are newly promoted into the league. Currently, unfortunately for Crawley, have lost all of their 13 or 11 games so far this season. So without a point yet. And look, Fulham were clinical. Unfortunately, we've not been able to see the highlights for this game yet, but Georgia Heisman opened the scoring. Sophie Manzi scored 2. The first one was a penalty, and Becky Stormer closed out the scoring in the 38th minute to make it 4-0. Crawley managed to hold tight in the second half and basically park the bus and avoid getting defeated by a larger number of goals. And I think Fulham probably took the foot off the gas a little bit in the second half, with some important games coming up in the coming weeks. Dad and Sam, how important is it to be clinical in games like this when you're playing a team bottom of the table? They'd be looking for any possible scalps. And, riding high off the Arsenal game, you do need to try and refocus in instances like this.
Yeah, I mean, you without putting too much pressure on this team, it is expected. It's about par, given where we are in the league, given our form. You would expect them to dispatch Crawley pretty ruthlessly. I don't understand. It's unusual that you score 4 in the first half and then don't score any further goals in the second half of the game.
Got nothing to prove anymore. Got nothing to prove.
Well, but I think one of the things that you kind of need to be able to do is, full execution would be pushing on and if they're that weak and you score 4, you should be getting 6 or 7. You'd think. So, but I don't know enough about what may have occurred to really be able to talk about that. But it's unusual.
You hear that, girls? Not good enough. Elton said it's not good enough. Just keep on. I think battering.
Damn right.
From all accounts, it seems like Crawley
terrible parent
put in a monumental effort to actually just completely shut the game down and to make sure that they didn't effectively get embarrassed in this game, because it's what we want to see when we play teams in a higher division from us. We want to make sure that you just put in a good showing more than anything. The result doesn't matter quite as much sometimes, especially when you're 4-0 down at half time. the manager would be saying to them at halftime, saying, let's not let this get to 10-0 and
playing
really
for pride, I think, is the term.
it is for pride, and I think they've actually done a very good job here, considering, let's be perfectly honest, they're bottom of the league, struggling to pick up points at all. This is, if you can keep a clean sheet in one half of a game against a flying Fulham, I think it actually is something that they can take away and take into the next game. So I understand why we went into halftime at 4-0 and didn't extend the lead. So obviously, I'm sure all the strikers who were on the pitch definitely wanted to score a few more, but it's the way it goes sometimes. You can't always score 10. If you could, we'd be doing it every week. But look,
sometimes you just got to give back to the community. You got to throw them a bone. you got to keep some fight in Crawley. Just let them believe.
2 goals for Sophie Manzi takes her to the top of the goal scoring charts. That's 15 goals for her so far this season. Just proving to be a superb signing for Fulham. Georgia Heisman scored her 10th for the season. Becky Stormer with her 4th. And obviously Becky scored in the Arsenal. No, Becky didn't score in the Arsenal game. But Becky scored a couple of weeks before. It's, again, we've said it week in, week out. It's great to see an array of goal scorers, and it's not all being put on one person, because I think that puts way too much pressure on someone. The fact of the matter is we now have, I think, 6 players with 5 or more goals so far this season, with 11 games gone. It's a really good return, and look, it's an important result. Dartford, who are sitting top of the league, didn't play in the league this week, so that win puts us just 2 points off top spot, with Dartford still to play their game. But more than anything, it puts pressure on Dartford going forward. And that's all we can ask for, is just to keep the pressure on Dartford, because all you can do is keep scoring goals, keep picking up points, and wait for Dartford to slip up. We do our job, and you just cross your fingers that they have that moment, and we'll have to come up against them later in the season as well. And if you're right behind them and they know that they lose that game and we overtake them, there's major mind games going on there. So I'm looking forward to that game later in the season.
Yeah. Hopefully there's not even mind games. Hopefully it's just Manzi mugging defenses.
Fingers crossed. Game this weekend, Sunday the 3rd of December at 3 p.m. Played at Homeland Stadium. Fulham will be taking on Ashford United. Ashford currently sitting 9th in the league. From 11 games, they've picked up 12 points. Just the 3 wins so far this season. A fairly good goal difference, considering they've sort of got a losing record at the moment of -2, and the teams around them all have goal differences of sort of -20, -30. So they've obviously got a fairly good defensive lineup, maybe not scoring the goals that they'd be hoping for. But again, it's another opportunity for Fulham to walk away with a victory. Dad and Sam, how important, as we sort of said coming into this Crawley game, how important is it just to make sure that you get the job done in games like this, where, like I said before, a team like Ashford will be looking for a scalp?
Well, I think it was my father who said a couple of weeks back that you got to put your foot on the neck and just keep pressing down. So as long as they just keep on doing that and just asserting dominance, it's all very violent. It's all very violent descriptions. But yeah, look, the girls are on a run right now. Let them keep running.
It was the throat, actually, Sam.
Oh, my mistake. My mistake. I can only apologize.
Yeah.
And look, on the weekend as well, Dartford will be playing against Saltdean. Now, Saltdean are currently sitting 4th in the league. Fifth in the league. They've won 5 of their 8 games this season. They'll definitely push Dartford and be looking for a result there. And look, this could be the week that Dartford do slip up and Fulham actually take the lead and potentially jump up a few places. Dartford have a couple of tough games in Saltdean and Dulwich Hamlet coming up. Fulham obviously playing Ashford, and I think the week after we have Ebbsfleet, which is going to be a bit of a tough game for us. Ebbsfleet sitting in 4th place. And so, yeah, I mean, just to sort of echo what we said a few times already, it's just about picking up consistent points, playing at our very best, and focusing on the league now, because I think we're pretty much done with cups until mid-February sometime now. We got a lot of away games in that period as well. There's obviously a bit of a break over the Christmas period, but there's the 3 games before the Christmas break: Ashford, Ebbsfleet, and Saltdean, going to be very important ones that could, I guess, give us a better idea of where our season's going come the second half of the season. Looking forward to seeing the highlights from the game against Crawley, and hopefully seeing a little bit more extended footage of the women's team over the next few weeks as well. Like we said a few times, it was such a joy to be able to cover the Arsenal game, and we hope to be able to cover it in more detail going forward. Guys, we have probably come to the end of the podcast. We'll, like I said, look to catch up in the coming days to preview the Liverpool game. It's a really good result for us. We've got a busy period coming up, and picking up 3 points against Wolves. I feel like if we had lost this game, it would be a pretty dire podcast to be sitting in at the moment, because we'd be a handful of points away from not a handful, 7 points away from the relegation zone, but with Luton and Everton sort of breathing down our necks. Fortunately, we're not in that position, and we did manage to come away with a good result. But there's a bit of positivity flowing at the moment, and I can't remember if I said it in my post-game tweet, my thoughts after the game, but it feels like there are enough positive moments and enough sparks to be able to look at this and say, if we make a couple of signings in January, there's some potential still here. You look at putting like Bassi and Tosin or Diop in defence together, picking up someone to partner, picking up Andre, for example, to partner Polina for the rest of the season, picking up a striker who can actually score goals. Like there is a couple of missing pieces of the puzzle. But imagine if we do actually fill those pieces, and all of a sudden we fly in the second half of the season. I think I saw someone tweet saying, from here, we probably only need 21 points for safety, 7 wins. And if you look at our next 10 games or so, there are sort of maybe 6 winnable games in there. And it could be that by sort of mid-February, we're actually looking at potentially needing just a handful of points to officially be safe. There's a couple of things that need to happen. Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me that, I mean, it would be a kind of a MacGyvering season to get it over the line, and it wouldn't be pretty, but it wouldn't surprise me if we end up doing that at all.
I mean, looking at our... Go on, Sammy. Sorry.
I feel that we will stumble over into next season, and I think you're 100% right. I think this game was actually probably the first game in a really long time where I've just been like, I can actually see the potential makings of what Fulham Phase 2 is going to be. And it does feel exciting. It does feel that we're kind of on the precipice of something good happening, provided we cut the fat. There's so many positives, and in all honesty, I don't really want to play Liverpool next week. And if you want to avoid that, low-key season 2 is really good. So if you just want to distract yourself, or just ride out this high, just keep riding out the high, guys. Just ride out for as long as possible, you know?
Yeah, look, if you look at our fixtures coming up through to the 10th of February, we have to play Burnley and Bournemouth twice in that period.
That's
very
right.
possible we pick up 4 wins in those games.
Right.
We play Everton and Nottingham Forest as well, so there's potential for another couple of wins.
Love that.
6 wins, what's that, 18 points to go with our 15 that we've already got. That takes us to 33 points in mid-Feb. And like I said before, I'm pretty sure 35, 36 points will be safe this season.
It sounds delicious. It sounds nice when you put it like that. That's all right.
And then look, we've got to still play Luton again. We've got to play Brentford again. Got to play Palace again. Got to play a few sides, Sheffield United as well, Wolves again. I can see the way forward from here. I'm not thinking that it's too dire at the moment. There's a long way to go though.
More penalties. More penalties,
yes.
you know? Just
penalties would be good.
Yeah.
So, look, guys, I think we can wrap it up there. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Sammy, I'm sure you're very happy that this is finishing at 10 past midnight for you rather than the usual 2 a.m.
Dude, especially after last podcast where I couldn't see for like the last 20 minutes. This is beautiful. This is sensational. I might actually even watch something after I finish this. Which can you believe? Can you believe? Now, thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun. I love doing this with energy, much to you two's dismay. Long may it rain. Here, carpe diem. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough.
Look, I'm just so happy that we finally got a win. And there were really entertaining moments. It was actually an exciting game. And I got a bit of an injection of energy after what feels like 4 or 5 or 6 weeks of
Dread.
not a lot to crow about. You know, after all, why do you follow a team if you can't get a few highs out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, we follow these teams for these little moments where you spend 20 minutes in the morning feeling great, and you actually have to go to work. But it's 100% worth it, even though I'm absolutely knackered. Look, guys, thank you again for joining us. Thank you to everyone who's joined on the live stream. We had a load of people watching along today, which is great. Make sure, as always, that you do share this stream and share when we post up the actual link to Spotify and Apple so that people can find the podcast and we can keep growing our little That's So Craven family. Thank you again to everyone, and until next time, come on, you Whites.